The arrival of the British East India Company in the subcontinent. History is not just a record of kings, wars, and empires, it is also the story of trade, opportunity, and ambition. The arrival of the British East India Company in the Indian subcontinent marked one of the most transformative chapters in South Asian history. This was not just the entry of merchants, it was the beginning of a centuries-long dominance that reshaped politics, society, economy, and culture of India and, eventually, Pakistan. The Age of Exploration. In the 15th and 16th centuries, Europe was undergoing massive change. The Renaissance had sparked curiosity, the Reformation had shifted beliefs, and most importantly, the Age of Exploration had opened new doors. European powers like Portugal, Spain, the Netherlands, and England were sending ships across oceans to discover new trade routes. Their goal was simple but ambitious: to find direct access to the riches of the East, particularly spices, silk, and precious stones. India, known as the Golden Bird because of its wealth, was a prime target. For centuries, Arab and Central Asian traders had controlled the land and sea routes. But now, Europeans wanted to bypass middlemen and establish direct contact with Indian markets. The first steps of the British were relatively late to the race. Portugal had already established its presence in Goa, while the Dutch controlled several spice islands in Southeast Asia. To compete, Queen Elizabeth I granted a charter in 1600 to a group of merchants, forming the East India Company. Their aim was purely commercial, buying and selling goods, not ruling territories. In 1608, the first English ship reached the port of Surat on India's western coast. 2 years later, in 1610, the East India Company officially set up its first trading post. Gradually, they expanded to Madras, Bombay, and Calcutta, strategically placing themselves in key coastal regions. Relationship with the Mughals. At that time, India was under the powerful Mughal Empire, ruled by Emperor Jahangir. The Mughals were strong, wealthy, and in no need of European protection. However, they welcomed foreign traders because they brought gold and silver in exchange for Indian goods like silk, cotton, indigo, and spices. The British East India Company cleverly adapted to this system. They respected Mughal authority, paid taxes, and sought official permission known as farmans to operate freely. This policy allowed them to grow without raising suspicion. The turning point: trade to power. While trade was the initial purpose, competition with other European powers forced the East India Company to strengthen its military. They began hiring local soldiers, known as sepoys, to protect their factories and warehouses. By the mid-17th century, the company had its own private army, which eventually became stronger than many regional rulers' forces. Another factor was the decline of the Mughal Empire. After the death of Aurangzeb in 1707, the empire began to weaken. Central authority collapsed, and regional states gained independence. This political instability gave the East India Company an opportunity to interfere in local disputes, offering military support in return for trade privileges and land. The real transformation came with the Battle of Plassey in 1757. The company, led by Robert Clive, defeated the Nawab of Bengal, Siraj-ud-Daulah, with the help of local traders like Mir Jafar. This was more than just a military victory, it was the beginning of British political dominance in India. Bengal, one of the richest provinces, came under company control. The company now had access to Bengal's immense resources, which funded its military expansion across the subcontinent. After Plassey, the East India Company shifted from traders to rulers. They imposed new systems of taxation, often exploiting peasants and farmers. The permanent settlement of Bengal, 1793, forced farmers to pay fixed taxes, leading to widespread poverty and famines. The company also introduced new legal and administrative systems. They built roads, postal services, and courts, but these were designed mainly to benefit trade and strengthen British control. Local industries, especially textiles, suffered as cheap British manufactured goods flooded Indian markets, destroying the livelihoods of artisans. After 1857, the British government in London decided that the East India Company could no longer be trusted to govern such a vast territory. In 1858, the British Crown formally took over administration, beginning what we call the British Raj. This ended the company's rule but cemented Britain's direct colonial control over India and present-day Pakistan for the next 90 years. The story of the British East India Company is not just about trade, it is about ambition, power, betrayal, and resistance. What began as a group of merchants in search of spices ended with an empire ruling over millions. It is a reminder of how economic motives can evolve into political domination, and how foreign interference can reshape entire civilizations.